Okay, so tonight we're going to talk a little bit about civil asset forfeiture that has come about in large part because of all of the stuff that's happened in Seward with the stories from Flatwater Free Press recently. To just give you a little bit of a background, back in 2016, Senator Garrett introduced LB 1106. I was one of the co-sponsors of the bill at that time, and we worked pretty hard to get that moved through the short session, and managed to get it done on the last day of the session. And one of the things that we have found since then is that as a result of it being on the last day of the session, there were some hijinks that occurred, we think, in terms of some amendments that ended up making it not quite what we thought it was going to be. And so I want to show you, this is a site that the Institute for Justice maintains, in forfeiture.com, and I would strongly suggest that anybody that really wants more information go to the Institute for Justice. They're the ones that brought us the bill in 2016, and unfortunately, because of a bunch of rushing things that went on in 2016 on the last day of the session, Senator Garrett didn't have a chance to talk to them about some of the amendments that had gotten added. The difference between civil forfeiture and criminal forfeiture is pretty simple. Criminal forfeiture is when you are actually found guilty of a crime, and you are the state takes the property that was a result, of the crime. So if you're a drug dealer, and they find a bunch of cash on you, and you're actually found guilty, then they take that that money or the cars or whatever. Civil forfeiture, it is a much more questionable practice, and one that we tried to end in 2016. What civil forfeiture does is says that it allows the police to stop somebody, and if they think you're suspicious, they do a search, or they ask for permission to do a search, and then if they find cash or something else that has drug residue on it, if the canines believe that it, they put trigger on it, I don't know. When the canines say that there's drugs on it, then what happens is that they will say, well, we can't prove that you were actually dealing drugs, but what we're going to do is we're going to take this cash now because we believe that it is the fruit of a crime, and so we're going to take this cash now, and we aren't going to charge you, and you can go on your way. But here's a thing for you to sign. It says that if you want to come and lay claim to this, then you have to come to court. And this happens along the interstate quite a lot. People passing through on I-80. Seward County is the big the one that's getting a lot of attention. People passing through Seward County on I-80. And if you have a car that doesn't have the right license plate, the Nebraska license plate, if you look suspicious, whatever that means, and if you're coming from out of state, certain states especially, I imagine, if you've got a New York license plate, or if they've got a reason to stop you, they will suspect you of dealing drugs if you've got a large amount of cash, even though there's nothing illegal about carrying cash. I mean, you can carry cash, and if they think that it's that it is the result of a drug deal, they'll just take it. Most people, because they tend to be less than $5,000, sometimes they'll get bigger amounts, but a lot of times it'll be less than $5,000, and people who were never never convicted of anything, never charged with anything, never even taken to the police department, will then, say, well, I'm from New York, I'm from New Jersey, and how much is it going to cost me to come back to Nebraska and try to get the money back? And a lot of times, if it's a fairly small amount, it's not worth it, because, you also have to hire a lawyer. You have to, you have to make the trip back. You have to hire a lawyer, all those sorts of things. So a lot of people don't even bother with it. And so if you take a look at this page, it's interesting. 9 out of 10 of the forfeitures are uncontested. In other words, the police take your money and they say you can come back to court, you have your day in court and try to get it back. But 9 out of 10 people don't even mess with it. And they would argue that people aren't coming, that the people aren't coming back because they know that they're guilty. But the reality is they were never charged of anything. And so for many people, it's just a matter that it's just not worth it to do that. Had a very famous case. We were lucky back in 2015 and 2016. There was a very famous case that was going on at the time. The ACLU of Nebraska was handling this. It was a traveling minister who or a missionary who was traveling through the state at the time, and he had been going from church to church collecting cash donations and had something like $30,000 in the back of his car. And they stopped him, and they for a broken out taillight or something like that, and they stopped him, and they found all this cash and decided that he must be, because he was Hispanic, that he was probably dealing drugs. And the ACLU took the case and got him his money back, but that doesn't usually happen. But he was able to make the case that he actually had stopped at all these different churches and collected cash and things like that. The Institute for Justice talks about the difference between civil asset forfeiture and criminal forfeiture. If anybody has any questions about that, this is a really good website. And I really can't do much to add to it. And of course, for the libertarians among us, none of this would even happen if we didn't have the silly, the silly war on drugs and prohibition, because we wouldn't have a reason to stop people. But in the current world, I think that next year, I think there's a plan for a bill to be introduced next year. And I think that it will probably be in need of a lot of support from across the political spectrum. And it'll be interesting to see whether we can move beyond the, tough on crime, and, these people wouldn't be carrying that kind of money if they weren't guilty of something, and that sort of thing. So this is a good website. Again, it has a whole bunch of stuff, and they are keeping it up to date because they have articles and such that they've been adding to it this year.